So here we have the M4A4 Sherman. In British terms, this would be the Sherman 5. What we're looking at is basically around about 17,000 Shermans being given under the Lend-Lease programme to the British and German forces during World War II, and they were fighting tanks to the British. 7,168 of the tanks that were Shermans in World War II were the M4A4. And this tank becomes very crucial to the British, and you're looking at about 41% of the tanks that are being used by British forces that are on the Shermans are being the M4A4, so it becomes a very important tank in those terms. Now the history of the tank and the design, this comes through in early 1941. We're seeing the M3 medium tank being coming out and being built into the British. The problem is that they're looking to put that 75mm gun, which is in the sponsor, they're looking to see if they can get that in a turret. British are over there with their tank mission, and we're saying we want a decent gun in the turret. We don't really want one in the sponsor. So what they have to do is learn how to basically cast a turret that can take a 75mm gun, and that's what begins to happen. The other thing that starts to happen as well is basically during the late 1930s, the Americans started to introduce people who were involved in the car production for GM, that type of thing, into the actual process of building tanks. And what they did up at Detroit was build the Detroit tank cars. That this wasn't a converted workshop or anything like that. This was a bespoke building to build tanks, and it featured all the production lines and all the knowledge of how to build tanks and how to build vehicles in production that these guys who worked in the automotive industry could put in. So you're getting this input into it. So this tank, which is produced at the Detroit Tank Castle by Chrysler in March 1943, is one of those vehicles. And the key thing with Sherman is that combination of this sort of early mid-war capability. It's got good mobility, it's got decent enough protection, and it's got decent firepower. And what we're looking at here in terms of crew is we're looking at a 5-man crew. We've got a driver, a bow machine gunner, and then a turret crew where you're looking at a tank commander, a gunner, and a loader. You're looking at a tank which combat weight of around 32 tonnes. And in terms of its firepower, we're looking at the 30 cal bow machine gun here at the front. You're looking at a 30 cal coaxial. You can have a 50 cal placed on a pintle up there for the commander to use, or from the rear on the back of the deck. So it was capable of having that secondary armour put on there, and this was very effective. And then it's got the 75mm gun, that M3 gun. This is such a boon to the British when that appears in the summer of 1942 and starts arriving in theatre, that it can't really be understated. They'd enjoyed the M2 gun on the Grants that arrived, and now they had one in the turret. That allowed them to traverse. This has got basically hydraulic and manual traverse, and that would allow them to traverse onto their targets and engage targets from a turret rather than a sponsor. The sponsor basically stops you going hull down. This allows you to engage targets and hit them. And that 75mm gun was a dual-purpose gun. The British had been suffering from being able to knock out the anti-tank guns and flak 88s out in the desert, and to have a gun that could actually basically provide a decent high explosive with an armour-piercing capability was one of the key things. So this combined all that in this tank. In terms of armour protection, you're looking at 3 inches here and 2 inches on the side. So frontal armour about 3 inches, 2 inches. So 76mm, 50mm. part of the armour will be about 12.5, and that will be at the rear. But this was pretty good 41, 42, 43. Once you get into the later war period, it becomes a problem. And what you start seeing in 44 is 43, 44 is an armouring programme where they put this applique armour on. You can see it here, this is on the sponson. That's to help protect these spots and give it extra protection where they may have the ammunition, stowage, etc., or the crew positions. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to improve it and make its life continue onwards. So it's very effective in that way. So it's got good protection. You will see as well, you've probably seen the photos of crews putting extra tracks on, putting cement on. There's that famous photo of the 9th US Armour Division and Patton's walking away from it because he's with a really angry face because he's just chewed the crew out because basically they put sandbags all over the front. He didn't like that. He wanted the tanks to be able to use their mobility. He didn't want to slow them down. So every time you put an extra bit of armour on or you put sandbags or stuff like that on, you're adding to its weight and that's actually impacting on its mobility. So basically it was realistically, you had your 76mm armour and that was effectively it. It wasn't too bad, but once you came across your Panthers, your Tigers, etc., you couldn't really get into a duel with them too much. You had to try and outflank them and hit them from the sides to the rear. In terms of its mobility, we've got the VBS, the vertical balloon suspension systems here. You can see the 3 sets of bogies either side. That allows it to have a really good sort of ground pressure and a good mobility. You've got different types of tracks that you can put on. You can put, there's 83 tracks to each side, and you can have rubber, or you can have steel chevron tracks, so they can have different tracks. The Americans had access to more rubber, so they can actually put rubber on tracks. This means you get a better ride quality out of it. And these are very sort of mobile vehicles. If we talk about the actual engine itself, this is a really interesting bit. The M4A4 featured the Chrysler multi-bank engine. Now these are 5 Chrysler engines all put together to give you 30 cylinders, and to do this they had to extend the length of the tank by around about 11 inches or 28 centimetres to fit that engine in. So basically what the thinking was with the multi-bank engine was that the American troops would probably have owned the Chrysler, probably worked on the actual engine itself and be able to fix it. So the idea, if you put an engine that they'd used before into a tank, they should be able to fix it. The problem was a lot of the, it needed a lot of work. You had 5 water pumps to begin with. It's only later on that are able to go down to 1 water pump. So it's like a lot of work going on with it. And the Americans tended to keep these tanks only for training purposes. They preferred the other tanks, the M4A2s, which the US Marine Corps used, and they loved the M4A3. That was virtually their tank that they used for the US Army tank battalions. So these tanks would be used, the mobility would be good, 30 to 35 miles per hour, and it would be able to use, it would be used by the combat commands of the US Armour Divisions. It would be used by British armoured regiments. You'd get between, say, 56, 59 tanks in those regiments. They'll be in 3 squadrons with a headquarters squadron, and then you'll get them interspersed with the Fireflies as well. So it was a very capable tank in this way. But the 75mm equipped Sherman was your key one. This one was the one that had that dual gun capability, and people like Patton were loath to use that. Yes, the 76mm came along, but they didn't have as good a high explosive capability as the 75. And so they kept the 75 in production for quite a long time. But it's a very effective tank, and this one, again, just shows you the sort of the capabilities of the Sherman. And you know, if you look at that tank and you compare it to the Type 95 over there, the Japanese really wouldn't have stood a chance. You can see pictures on these Japanese islands, on these Pacific islands, where they've just shattered the armour. It will just penetrate it through. That will knock that tank out at any range you can see it. That tank, the Type 95, would basically have to come to a rear or a side shot and effectively get very close to actually put a round through. So it was an effective tank in its own right. Right, moving on. Oh, any crew member want to give a quick chat? I'm just going to ask you what it's like to drive a bit.
It's hard work. She's a big wheel to steer around tight corners. It's a lot of fun. 1,060 foot-pound of torque to do that. But yeah, she's difficult to drive. The driver, one chap who drove one day in Holland a couple of years ago, was extremely achy and tired by the end of the day. So
That explains why he's driving the Chaffee.
yeah, that's why he's put me in here.
Nice one, thanks for that.
So when the Americans knew about the Tiger, they fought against them in Tunisia. Why didn't they decide to build a bigger, heavier tank to match it? That idea of the Sherman, 30 tons, it's because they had to ship. There's no fighting going on in America. Whatever they make there has got to be shipped all around the world. 30 tons, they knew, is about the maximum weight that most ports, most ships, most derricks, most cranes could deal with. So there's no point in building huge, great, heavy things that we can't support or get to where they're needed. So again, looking behind how they thought they were going to use the tanks, where they were going to have to use them, how they were going to have to ship them. And the Americans saw their doctrine originally was a tank as a weapon of exploitation. Let's go through the gaps. If we meet enemy tanks, we're going to have, originally the idea was tank destroyers, other types of vehicles with heavier guns on, less armour but speed. So things like the M10 as a tank destroyer, later the M18 Hellcat. As we know, that system didn't really work for them. Tanks end up fighting tanks. So by the 1945, the Americans are realising we need to upgrade to a heavier tank, such as Pershing, and we need bigger guns and better guns put on our tanks, such as the 76mm you can see in the steering vehicle.